Hello and welcome to another custom figure video. I'm Norva Ragnor and in this video I'll be turning Princess Peach into a gear. This will be my third Mario themed custom, and who else to add to the squad than the princess herself. Princess Peach usually takes up the role of the damsel in distress who is always in another castle. Poor Mario, forever ghosted. With the release of the Mario movie earlier in April, they changed her role and made her a much more fierce character. An upgrading character I'm sure we can all agree was great. And as usual, before any custom can start, we need to prep. The prep work was the same as my previous customs, taking the head from a Peach image, putting it onto an Anya body and colouring the armour pink. I made a sort of logo poster too, just like I did with Mario and Luigi. It's pretty basic and self-explanatory. With all the customs, you need figures. This triple pack is the only way to get the standard version of Princess Peach. I didn't find this out until after I'd already got a Mario and Luigi, so now I have a spare Mario and a spare Luigi. But that's not a bad thing. Maybe I'll use them in some photos for my Instagram. Check it out to get exclusive behind the scenes info and photography. The Peach figure looks pretty decent, but I'm not a huge fan of this particular figure myself. This figure is very basic in terms of articulation, with joints in the neck, shoulder, elbow and hip swivel. There is no leg articulation. It also feels very flimsy compared to the other figures in this line, which is mostly due to Peach being a lot thinner than that of Mario and Luigi. These are the main reasons why I'm not exactly a huge fan of this figure, but as this is being used for a custom, it's not really a huge deal. You can also see this black printing. For whatever reason, they printed it on the front of the dress. Not sure as to why, but it's a little thing that bugs me. And I only need one part for my custom. And in honour of old King Henry VIII, I'll be taking this princess's head.
Up for the head!
The body I use as always in making a monstrous creation, so stay tuned for that. Princess Peach's first appearance was in Super Mario Bros. Back in 1985 as an NPC, but became a playable character in the sequel game. Like I stated earlier, Peach is usually taking up the role of damsel in distress. The Mario movie wasn't the only thing that showed off Peach's competence in being able to handle herself. In 2005, Peach was the protagonist of her very own game, Super Princess Peach, in which she has to save Mario, Luigi and the Toads from Bowser. Peach was also the second most requested character among fans of the Super Smash Bros. Melee game with 66 votes, while the official Nintendo magazine rated her as the second greatest female character. The Guinness World Records Gamers Edition ranked Peach as the 44th greatest gaming character of all time. I'm interested to see what you guys think of those statistics. Would you place Peach in the silver position for greatest female character? Leave a comment and let me know. The Anya figure is what will make up the Gears side and most of the custom. A figure once again from NECA, from the Gears of War 3 games. And as it stands, it's still the only female character we have from the Gears line. As is often the case with NECA, this figure is greatly detailed, greatly articulated, and looks incredible. Coincidental, this character's name is Anya, and the actress that voiced Peach was also Anya. Weird, huh? Anya spends the first two games as Delta Squad's voice in the ear and contact to command. As the game progressed and the world got desperate, she becomes a full-fledged Gear soldier, aiding Delta in their battles. Between Gears 3 and 4, Anya becomes the First Minister and helps with rebuilding the cog, and starts to repair the world with the building of settlements. During this time, a program was set up to repopulate the planet of Serra, and aided those who were incapable of getting pregnant. With this program, Anya gave birth to a son, James Dominic Phoenix, with Marcus being the father. While this program helped Anya conceive one child, she tried again and complications ended up costing her her life. Anya was such a main character of the original trilogy of games, and to have her death be off-screen between games and only really mentioned properly in the 5th game felt like a huge insult to that character. For heads, I use the same technique as always. Hot water, soak for a few minutes, then remove. And now the head.
Oh my!
Sometimes things don't always go to plan, and that's part of creating customs. Things can break, and as you can see here, Peach's neck joint snapped right off when I removed it. This is most likely due to the stick thin neck and it being flimsy. The process is copied for Anya, dunked in hot water, soaked for a few minutes, and then the joint should be soft enough to remove easily enough.
Revive me!
I leave the parts to dry for about 5 to 10 minutes. This is so the plastic and rubber can reharden. Looking at these parts now, I can tell I'm going to have to do a bit extra work than planned. The head doesn't line up with the neck joint properly. This is mainly due to the hairpiece being quite thick and coming into contact with the back armour. To solve this, I hollow out a thick part of the hair, giving it the appearance of wrapping around the armour it comes into contact with. At least that's the plan. Princess Peach is mostly pink, so I decided to grab 2 shades, a fluorescent pink for the majority of the armour and an opaque pink for more detailing. I was toying with the idea of giving Peach the same paint scheme as Mario and Luigi with the overalls, but decided to go for a more Peach customed armour. I begin to paint the armour using the fluorescent pink, which as you can see is extremely thin layered. This was a huge problem and set me back weeks in terms of work. Due to how thin this paint went onto the figure, I had to add about 6 or 7 layers, waiting for it to dry properly after each coat. As I painted small areas at a time, this took longer than expected. In total, to finish the entire figure with its base coat, it took me around 2 weeks. This pink was extremely frustrating to use, and I even mixed it with the cathedral pink I had to try and thicken it out. It didn't work. This is what it looked like after one coat had dried. The armour colour is still clearly seen through the paint. A recurring issue during this first stage. While the torso dries, I move on to the back and start painting. At this point I was aware that I was going to have to do a lot more layers, so I wanted to get as much paint on the figure as possible. It just doesn't help that my camera decides to focus more on Bowser trying to sell Mario a barrel, rather than me painting. Perhaps that would have been a more exciting video to watch, eh? Not like I'm trying to make a video about custom Peach or nothing. After many hours, this is what the body looked like after about 3 or 4 layers. Slowly, painfully slowly, getting to where I wanted it. Still not perfect, but I'm only halfway through the coats. This is how the armour looks after its 8th coat. The paint at this point is still wet, so I'm hoping that when it dries, it gives me the look I'm after. It looks like it's covered nicely after the painful events of painting to this point, so let's see if the effort was worth it. Here it is finally dried. It doesn't look perfect, nor does it look how I was hoping it would, but this paint process has been super frustrating and time consuming, so for it to look like this, I'm as happy as I can be with it. With the front and back painted, I now move on to the side chest plates and straps. Again, having to wait for each coat to dry properly before adding the next. I do a few touch-ups on the front and back on patches that start appearing. While I wait for the sides to dry, and after I continue to add coats, I decide to move on to the shoulders and neck. I continue to patch up the back and front armour when I notice any scuffs or patches coming through. The shoulders and neck seem to take the paint a little better than the armour. Most likely due to the colour of the figure being lighter, but it still needed multiple layers to get the proper full effect. I was hoping that the figure would look better at this point, but due to the multiple layers needed, the paint doesn't look as smooth or as good as I was hoping. The next step is to move down and start painting the figure's midsection, doing the same thing of multiple layers and leaving to dry. You can see how transparent this paint is from just one layer, almost looks as if it isn't even being painted. I hope I never need to use pink ever again. It is by far the worst colour to use. While the midsection dries, I try to make the most of the time by making a start on the bottom half and started painting the legs. working on the two different areas will hopefully speed up the painting process. As by this point the painting had taken nearly double the length of creating the entire Mario and Luigi customs, and I still have a long way to go. After many coats and drying time, the legs, midsection and armour are starting to look good, or at least as good as it can do. Maybe I need to invest in an air gun to get a decent proper coverage. But at the very least, the visual side of what I wanted to achieve is really starting to come along. And yes, that is a headless Peach getting chatted up by the Mario brothers in the background. Next up is the knee pads, and I'm sure you can guess, again it's rinse and repeat with the paint and dry. While I wait for the pads to dry, I give a visual look at the paint done and touch up any areas that looks faded or patchy. After a few layers, the knee pads still look very transparent. With all the layers on and paint finally dry, the knee pads are finished. The final part of the armour to be painted, while using this colour, is the waistband, that also works as a form of utility belt holding various items. The Princess Peach figure has red fabric around the waist of the dress, so I was going to paint this waistband red, using the pink as an undercoat. Again, a few coats later and the waistband still looks very transparent. At first it wasn't going to be an issue as I wanted the pink more as an undercoat for when I painted it red, but that plan changed and I ended up giving it a completely different shade, which I will show later on. For whatever reason, no matter how many coats I gave the waistband, it seemed to keep appearing blotchy. I painted the packs pink too, as I wasn't too sure if I wanted them brown or to keep it one whole colour. And I thought at the very least, if I want to change my mind, at least brown will cover pink easy enough. I hope. As the waistband was becoming a pain to paint, I ended up coming back to it a few days later and gave it a few coats of paint using the fluorescent pink without mixing it with my cathedral pink, which gave it a much lighter shade. I'm not too sure if it stands out much on camera, but to the eyes it's pretty clear. It's a mistake I can correct later on, but at this point I just wanted it finished. The waistband is a little more clear here to see, but finally I'm finished with the paint in the backside pink and decided to change to the opaque pink. I used this colour to help emphasise the details and outlines of the armour. I decided to paint the entire chest plate in this dark pink to break up the solid fluorescent pink. I followed all the ridges and lines that separate the different armour plates. I painted the grates and grooves on the armour as well as the legs, while also highlighting certain areas on the knee pads. This little detail again helps break up the solid pink colour and just gives it that touch of character. Unlike Mario and Luigi, Crimson Omen emblem seems to be on Anya's backside instead of the chest plates. I wasn't 100% sure if Peach's shoes were dark pink or red, so I decided to see what they looked like painted dark pink. This would give me a good visual as to whether or not I wanted to keep them that colour or try repainting them red later on. I decided to change the colour of the packs back to brown as I wasn't liking the fact that they were pink. This helps separate the packs from the armour, which is the idea. Thankfully this only needed a single coat. Bliss. I did the same for the pouch that holds the water canteen or whatever this is supposed to be. I do need to get rid of the pink that went onto the silver though. So like I said earlier about checking the colour of the boots, I wasn't a fan of the dark pink, and when looking properly I realised that Peach's shoes were in fact red. So with this I repainted the boots red, which I actually really liked as it broke up the colour of shaded pinks. The boots really stand out from the rest of the figure and look great. I decided to add some red highlights over the armour lights and over the waistband just to give it a bit of variety. Using my Cathedral Technical Soulstone Blue, I add the paint to the lights on the armour. This will give the lights a reflective finish which gives off an impression of glass. Just like my Mario custom, I think this gives a better effect than the paint used by NECA. and is an easy fix. I did do the same with my Luigi custom, I just didn't show that process in the video. The Princess Peach figure has elbow length gloves, and Anya's arm protection fits perfectly to replicate this look. In the past I've really had issues with white paint, so I decided to try watering the paint down. I may have watered it down a bit too much, but it certainly worked much better than how I usually paint. It took a few more coats than usual, but what else is new with this figure? Seems to be the running theme. But when finished, it looks good and gives the figure that finishing touch and really brings it together. The paintwork for the figure is pretty much finished. It's nice to step back and take time to observe the work done so far, and is the best time to make any changes. Princess Peach has a yellow and blue jewel piece on her dress, and I wanted to include this in the armour. I felt the best place for this was the circular chest plates on the armour. I painted the plate blue and the outer ring yellow. I used the soulstone blue again to give the plates a glossy look, which hopefully when dry will look like a pair of gemstones. I think it pulled that look off. Now it's time to attach the head, and like I stated earlier, the hair gets in the way of the head sitting in place smoothly, so I need to hollow out the hair and have it wrap around the armour, and hopefully that will work. I hollow the hair out by using my hobby knife. It's extremely sharp, so if you do have one, please take extra care while using it and never have the blade pointing towards you. I slice small parts at a time as I don't want to take off more than I actually need and ruin the custom. I pre-measured a rough section of what needed to be removed and worked on getting it hollowed out. Hollowing the hair out didn't work, so I decided to give Peaches a bit of a haircut, which, seeing as how this custom is going to have her as a soldier, having long hair would probably be problematic. Personally, I think it actually looks better short too, and suits the custom pretty well. The short hair doesn't get in the way of the armour, so it was definitely the right call. Now I just need to sort out the long protruding neck that doesn't look right with the Peach's head at all. This looks ridiculous. After measuring the head and neck, I got right to removing the neck. As always, making sure to be careful not to cut myself, but to also not to damage the edges of the armour around the neck. The neck can be quite hard to cut through, so just using a bit of pressure and rotating the blade cuts through the rubberized plastic easily enough. Just takes a bit of patience and persistence, which seems to be another theme with this figure with the issues it's thrown at me. My past 3 customs before this one, I have enjoyed every part of its creation. This one has been completely different. The amount of obstacles thrown in front of me from this custom has been immense. The head joint snapping, the paint gun on too thin, the paint correction of packs and chest plates, the hairpiece, it's been a bit of a rough creation. Frustrating more than enjoyable. With the neck cut and smoothed out the best I can, I attached the head to make sure it looks good. One thing I noticed was the colour skin was 2 different tones. Peach's is a little pale, whereas Anya has a bit of a tan. I go through my paints to try and find my skin tone colours, and I mix them up with a bit of white to try and get the same complexion. If the colour still needs to be lighter, I add a little bit more white. I do this in small drops as I don't want to have to keep correcting and mixing the paint and end up with more than I need. I cover the neck and upper arms until I have covered the entire skin in the paler shade. This took a few coats to finish off, but what else is new, eh? I compare Peach's head to the painted neck to make sure I got the skin tone the same or as close to each other as possible. When I painted the neck, I went over the cog tags as I decided it was easier to repaint the tags than mess around with being neat, as at this stage I just wanted it finished. I was getting a little frustrated at this point, and that's the worst mood to be in when trying to do intricate painting. I followed the ridge which is meant to be the necklace for the tags and painted it in black, then painted the cog tags themselves in a steel paint that I used to add the scratches to the armour. Just like the lights, I feel this gives a better look than the original paint. Now time to give Peaches her weapon. Lieutenant Peaches. The custom looks better than I give credit, but I feel that as I rushed a lot of it, and with the frustrations caused, I didn't give it my full creative attention. The main paint on the armour really doesn't look great, which may not be caught on camera, but to the naked eye, you can tell I've had to put on multiple coats. I love the paint scheme on the shotgun though, which is most likely my favourite part of this custom. I really liked the idea of Peaches being an absolute badass like in the movie, and giving her a close quarters weapon helps establish that badassery. I'm kind of going for a Gears style Ripley or Sarah Connor. Overall, this has been my least favourite custom to create, but with that said, the finished product came out better than I was expecting and still looks great. Lieutenant Peaches will be joining Mario and Luigi in some upcoming photo shoots, and if you want to see those, please head over to my Instagram to get all that exclusive content. Thank you for watching my custom creation. As always, stay safe and subscribe if you want to or not, but do or don't.